So, warm greetings, and it's here Sunday morning here in California, and I see there's people here from France and Turkey and Mexico and East Coast. It's wonderful to see all of us gathering together to do for the meditation and the Dharma. So thank you very much. So, as a introduction to this meditation, there is 4 guidelines the Buddha gives for right speech. There's lots he says about it, but a particular list of 4, which is when you're going to speak, to consider, is it true? Is it kind? Is it beneficial? And is it timely? And so the same thing can be applied to how we speak to ourselves or how we think about ourselves in a meditation. Is what we're thinking, how we are with ourselves, is it true? Are we connecting to what's really happening in a truthful way? Is it kind, how we are with ourselves, how we relate to ourselves? Is it beneficial, how we're relating to ourselves or whatever's happening in meditation? And is it timely? And so 2 of these things, the timely, am I on time? Am I in time? Or am I ahead of time or after time? Thinking about the future is you're ahead of time. If you're thinking about the past, you're behind time. You're in time here, now. And is it kind? This is one of the primary characteristics of both the goal of Buddhist practice and also the means to it, is to have a degree of care and kindness, friendliness in all directions, but in particular to oneself. But to do so when it's beneficial, to do so in a beneficial way. And so to sit and meditate, remembering that we sit down to see if we could relate to ourselves, be here, evoke some appropriate means, way of seeing ourselves, holding ourselves in friendship, in a friendly way to ourselves and all that we experience, in a kind way, in a caring way, maybe in a compassionate way. And that this allows us to settle. This allows us to not be in conflict or struggle with ourselves. If it's hard to be kind, don't struggle with that. Maybe there's a way of offering some goodwill to that difficulty. Of course it's difficult. Of course this is a hard life and difficult things have happened. And because of that difficulty, even that challenge we have to be kind, let's have goodwill to that, compassion, care. So to take this meditation, take a posture. And here too, maybe posture can be a true posture, a posture that's true to your innate value and dignity. A Buddhist word would be your innate or your nobility. And true to your circumstance, to how your body is and what you're able to do. And is the posture kind? Or are you straining and trying to almost get away from something or to prove something? Can that be a kind posture, friendly posture? And can it be beneficial, the posture you're sitting in? One that finds the balance between alertness and relaxation. It's not beneficial to be overly relaxed, and it's not beneficial to be overly alert. But the balance of those two, as if relaxation and alertness are two sides of the same hand. And are you in time? Establish yourself here in this time by maybe taking a few long, slow, deep breaths. And to maybe as you exhale, to relax into this time, this place, this body, this being that you are. That for these minutes, maybe you'll be kind. Maybe as you inhale, fill yourself with kindness. Fill yourself with goodwill or a sense of care, like you're caring for yourself. After all, this is a path to freeing ourselves from suffering. It's one of the most beneficial and caring things we can do. And then letting your breathing return to normal. And continue to relax a bit. As you exhale, softening wherever in your body you might feel some extra holding, tension. Softening, relaxing in the face. In the shoulders. In the chest, both the surface of the chest and deep in the heart center. And softening the belly. And then sitting quietly, see if there's some gentle way, and maybe it's only a slight way, that you open up an attitude of friendliness to all that you will experience during this meditation. Open an attitude of kindness so that your awareness is kind, is caring. And what's beneficial about this such a simple, kind, open awareness, that it's easier to gather ourselves together, to become whole, unified, connected to it all when we're not, but it's easier to do so when we're not in conflict with what's going on or racing away from what's happening here. And a great support for all this, for some of us, can be resting the experience, this kind awareness, with the breathing. Breathing in and breathing out. And if it's nice for you to do so, maybe as you inhale, filling kindness, goodwill, care throughout your body, And as you exhale, spread that outwards beyond you into the world. Kindness is born with the beginning of the in-breath and spreads wide in the exhale. Letting the thinking mind become quieter, stiller, softer. Not trying too hard, but not letting up either. A gentle persistence, breathing in and breathing out. Breathing kindness, spreads through the body and spreads beyond. May we generate kindness for ourselves and for all things. and you find yourself drifting off in thought, use that as a reminder to be kind. And in the kindness and the friendliness, appreciate that it's more beneficial to be awake to what's happening here and now, to be in time, on time here, with awareness, kind awareness, breathing in and breathing out. And this movement towards kindness perhaps makes it more inviting to be awake, to be mindful, to be present here. And as we come to the end of this sitting, perhaps if it's easy enough for you to generate goodwill, kindness, compassion, a sense of care as you inhale, fill your lungs with, just as you fill your lungs with oxygen, you fill your body with a sense of care and kindness. And as you exhale, to spread that kindness out to the people who you think of that would be useful to hold in your care and your kindness and your friendliness. Breathing out, spreading it out to those you know and think of, wishing them well. Friends, family, people around the world who you don't know. People who are struggling and are unhappy. People who are happy and celebrating. See if you can spread your goodwill outward equally to all beings everywhere. That the very basic human sense of care and goodwill is something that's appropriate to spread wide and far and equally to all beings. And to have the aspiration that every time you meditate, that you do so to benefit yourself and to benefit the world, for your own welfare and the welfare of others. Maybe equally. And the more the meditation benefits you, the more you'll be able to benefit the world. May it be that our meditation this morning or this day is for the welfare and happiness of the whole world. That we make a difference on this day. And then when we get up from meditation and continue over the next 24 hours, that perhaps we're inspired to act, to speak, and to think with goodwill to the people we encounter and the people who come into our hearts and minds. May all beings be kind. May all beings receive our goodwill. May all beings be happy. May all beings be safe. And may all beings be free. So, greetings from our Sunday morning in California, and welcome to the Dharma Talk. And I would like to read a passage from the middle-length discourses, the Discourse 48, and I debated not telling you where it was from. and just reading it, the passage, and maybe if I could have asked you to guess, if you had to know the context of the passage, what is this about? But I'll read you the passage. They had taken to quarreling and brawling, and were deep in disputes, stabbing each other with verbal daggers. They could neither convince each other nor be convinced by others. They could neither persuade each other nor be persuaded by others. So maybe you can think of occasions where this has been the case. Maybe for those in the United States, we can think of maybe very recent events or even current events where this is still going on. And this passage opens up a discourse called Kosambiya Sutta, where at a time when the monastic followers of the Buddha were in dispute. Sometimes we idealize both the Buddha and his early monastics and have this idea the Buddha was infinitely wise and compassionate, and if we could, whatever he says, people would just be enlightened and be well behaved. And however, that wasn't the case in the ancient world, and certainly he was an effective teacher. But not everyone got the message from him that what he was trying to teach. And so sometimes his monastics were kind of behaved poorly. And here's one occasion, there was a dispute over a monastic who may or may not have violated a monastic rule. And those who thought he did were arguing against those who thought he did not. And those who thought that he did not argued with verbal daggers against those who thought he did. And they could not convince each other. Back and forth, they were stuck with each other. And so, as was the occasion, someone would go to the Buddha and explain what was going on. And he called them for a meeting, and he asked them, "Is it true that you're doing this? Is it true that you are quarreling and brawling, deep in disputes, stabbing each other with verbal daggers, and that you can't persuade each other?" And the Buddha and the monk said, "Yes." What I like about this is that the Buddha heard a story about what was going on, the disputes, conflicts going on in his community. And the first thing he does is to ask the parties to come, and he asks them, is this what's happening? Giving them a chance to explain differently and find out for himself what was actually happening, and not prejudging maybe the situation, but waiting for to hear from them, the parties. But as it was, the party said yes. They were in fact doing all those things. And so the Buddha then said to them, when you take to quarreling and brawling and are deep in disputes, stabbing each other with verbal daggers, do you on that occasion maintain acts of loving kindness by body, speech, and mind, in public and in private, towards your companions in the holy life? And so when you're arguing with each other, are you being kind? Do you have goodwill for each other? And the monastics, maybe being honest people and direct people, and they said, no. When we're arguing, there's no goodwill in our hearts towards the others. And then Buddha goes on to say, when you're that way, quarreling and brawling and in disputes, stabbing each other with verbal daggers, what can you possibly know? What can you see that you take to quarreling and brawling and are deep in disputes? So what is it that you know that makes it worthwhile or appropriate? What do you see that gives reason, really, to be this way? And the Buddha says, in doing so, in doing arguing, and you lead to your harm, your own harm, and suffering for a long time. So he's kind of rhetorically saying, what could you possibly believe that makes this appropriate to be having verbal daggers at each other? And if you continue this way without any loving kindness, you're hurting yourself. So it's kind of interesting. He points it back to them as individuals. He doesn't say you're hurting other people and you shouldn't do that. Maybe he evokes something that's very personal. Maybe no one wants to hurt themselves. And so by evoking that's where he's going, then it's not an obligation to be kind and compassionate. It's not shaming them that they're treating other people differently. He's in a sense reminding them, you're harming yourself, and maybe for a long time to continue this way. And so continuing from this passage in the middle length discourse, discourse number 48, the Buddha goes on and says, there are these 6 principles of cordiality, of friendliness. And this is what next passage I really like, and I want to emphasize it. So 6 principles of cordiality that create love and respect and conduce to cohesion, to non-dispute, to concord, and to unity. So here we see the Buddha emphasizing values that he puts great emphasis on, that the social values of love and respect. We love each other and respect each other. The word for love is piya, P-I-Y-A, and so I don't know if it has a little different feeling than the English word love is so broad and vague in meaning sometimes. And then respect, and to love and respect each other. That's a social value that the Buddha puts in his teachings to his followers, his practitioners. And the idea of cohesion, kind of togetherness, to non-dispute, to concord, and to unity. So this idea of concord and unity is extremely important for the Buddha. And one of the principles of right speech is to speak what brings unity, brings concord to a community. The idea of speaking in ways that's divisive is considered unwholesome in Buddhism. It's harmful to oneself to do that and to others. So then he's going to list the 6 principles of cordiality. The 6 principles that are conducive to love, respect, non-dispute, unity. And the first 3 I'll abbreviate because they're almost the same thing. One has to do with acts of body, kind of what we do in the world physically. The other has to do with verbal acts, and the third has to do with mental acts, how we think and what goes on inside our minds towards others. Here, a person maintains bodily acts of loving kindness or goodwill. Some people prefer the translation. Here, one maintains bodily acts of goodwill, both in public and in private, towards one's companions in the holy life. He's talking to monastics, so he's talking about how to take care of your own community. This is a principle of cordiality that creates love and respect and conduces to cohesion, to non-dispute, to concord, and to unity. And then he says the same thing for verbal acts of goodwill, loving kindness, and then mental acts of loving kindness or goodwill. So the idea that one would, in the privacy of one's own mind, what we do there is consequential. That the Buddha doesn't think it's only about what you say and you do, but we really want to transform or appropriately evoke or generate within inside ourselves goodwill towards others. And the art of it is to discover how to do it in a genuine way. And for some people, it's only after we really recognize our suffering, how we're hurt or afraid or angry, and really learn how to be present for it and see it, that we can somehow begin to break the frozen places inside, the stuck places inside, so we can begin seeing or viewing others in ways that our goodwill can flow outwards. And so, but to begin by having goodwill to our own place of anger and hurt and in the ways we're stuck, not to, make it worse by second arrows that we put on ourselves. And then Buddha says to do that both publicly and privately. And what privately I think means here is in ways that other people don't know you're doing it. So if you're doing acts of loving kindness, of goodwill, both physical acts in the world, doing actually something or saying something, or thinking about people in particular ways, they might not have to know it that you're doing it. Perhaps you do it, anonymously, or you speak about them or do something good for them in a time that they don't recognize it, that you're doing it, and then maybe they never know. Maybe in your home you do the dishes when they're dirty in the sink, and no one ever knows you do it. You don't get any credit for it, but in fact you're supporting whoever is in your house, if that's the case. Or private acts of loving kindness might be if you're driving, and maybe you drive in a way that is very respectful and makes room for other drivers, and they're not really recognizing that you're not tailgating, or they don't recognize that you have given them the right of way, or that you're driving, supportively for others. But in your mind, you're doing it privately. You're just supporting others. Your goodwill, your generosity is going outwards. So this idea of practicing loving kindness for some people, when you don't get any credit for it, is it's hard for some people. But in fact, we get a lot of credit in our hearts, in ourselves, and it makes a difference. We're beginning to transform ourselves through acts of goodwill. And one of the ways the transformational power of goodwill or love and these principles of cordiality is that it's beginning to shift the locus of attention, the locus of our life energy, from things which are unwholesome and harmful and painful, that kind of debilitate us or bring us down, to the things that uplift us and move us in the path to freedom. And that's such an important shift in this practice. And to take the time, and the challenging time sometimes, to discover how to have a genuine goodwill, genuine caring for others, generosity of spirit to others, that doesn't feel like a burden, doesn't feel like an obligation, doesn't feel forced or artificial. To spend the time to learn that, maybe in very small steps, the smallest steps possible, just so we're moving in that direction, beginning to awaken this possibility within us. So this is 3 of the principles of cordiality the Buddha emphasized that lead to love and respect and unity and non-dispute. Now the 4th one, I think is also maybe somewhat understandable how this works. The person uses things in common. People use the things in common with their virtuous companions in the holy life. That is, one doesn't hold on to just my stuff. That's just my things but rather we share with others. And here it's with companions in the holy life. And the question is, who are our companions? Maybe the people we live with, our family, our relatives, our friends we know, our community, our communities, maybe the whole world. A sense that of generosity and sharing and not holding to myself. When I was 17, a formative experience for me was traveling around, back then, Yugoslavia and Greece, with 4 friends in a Volkswagen Volkswagen van that Only had the front seats, no back seats. So some of us were always sitting on the floor in the back. And we had very little money. I think for the 4 weeks in which I traveled with my friends, maybe I had $50 or so. And so we shared everything. There was no sense of, mine and yours. And it was quite inspiring to whatever we had to share with our friends and get along and make our way, sleeping in all kinds of places. Remember, back then, a long time ago, we slept in the park underneath the Acropolis and sleeping outdoors, and probably it's impossible to do that now. And going over the dirt roads and passes over, I guess now it's, what is it now? Anyways, back then, Yugoslavia. And this idea of sharing, and that was my formative experience, that people can do this, we can share. And it was actually very hard to come back to the United States and experience my friends not knowing how to do this, not being inclined to do this at all. And it was kind of a little jarring for me as a teenager. And so the fourth act of cordiality, a bhikkhu uses things in common, monastics use things in common with one's virtuous companions in the holy life without making reservations. One shares with them any gain of a kind that accords with the Dhamma, has been attained in a way that accords with the Dhamma, including even the contents of their bowls, their begging bowls. So whatever gain, whatever one has acquired, earned, in a just way, in an ethical way, in accord to the Dhamma here. This too is a principle of cordiality that creates love and respect and conduces to unity. And then it gets a little bit, the fifth one is, they dwell both in public and in private, possessing in common with their companions in the holy life those virtues that are unbroken, untorn, unblotched, unmottled, liberating, commended by the wise, not misapprehended, and conducive to concentration. So here they're behaving virtuously. They're living an ethical life. And living an ethical life is conducive to love and respect and to unity. Living unethically is conducive to breaking unity, to causing harm and separation and fracturing and rupturing relationships we have. And there's something very inspiring to meet someone who has ethical integrity and feel like this person I can trust. Ah, yes, I can trust this person with in all kinds of ways. And two things about this statement. It's the virtuous behavior that is liberating. So we don't often see virtue, ethics, and liberation together in the same sentence. Maybe they're not so separate from each other. They are quite intimately connected, that the movement to being ethical is a movement to being free, spiritually free, heartfully free, the liberation that the Buddhism emphasizes. And we see this because to be genuinely, in a relaxed way, virtuous means we have let go of being non-virtuous, which is motivated by the opposite to liberation. It's motivated by ways in which we're caught up in greed, hate, and delusion. But then also very interesting is that this idea of being virtuous, it's that virtue which leads to concentration. And this is a high value in Buddhism, to conduct your life in such a way that when you sit down to meditate, you can be settled. You don't sit with regrets, resentments, you don't sit with feelings of shame or guilt or upset. We sit down and feel certain ease and confidence. The Buddha even talked about a certain kind of happiness, the happiness of blamelessness, the happiness of being content to know I haven't caused any harm. It's a little bit hard sometimes, especially in Western or here in the United States, where a lot of people will feel guilty for no reason at all. They just feel like it's a policy, or they just kind of inherited or been acquired from society, family, some idea of being inadequate and being wrong, they haven't really done anything, but it's just an assumption or a belief that that's the case. So then it's hard to feel the happiness of blamelessness, because we're to blame even though we haven't done anything. Just breathing, we're somehow wrong. But to really deep look inside of ourselves and really recognize, I haven't hurt anybody today. At least for today, I can go to sleep content and happy that I haven't hurt anyone. I've been careful with what I say and what I do. And the Buddha encouraged this kind of contentment and happiness. And it doesn't have to be like your whole life. Let it be from now on. This too is a principle of cordiality that creates love and respect and conduces to unity. And then to come to the sixth one. And this is an interesting one, and it's the heart of the Buddha's message of liberation. And they dwell both in public and in private, possessing in common with their companions in the holy life that insight that is noble and emancipating, that leads one who practices in accordance with it to the complete destruction of suffering. This too is a principle of cordiality that creates love and respect and conduces to cohesion, to non-dispute, to concord, and to unity. So this idea that there's an insight, with the kind of the mindfulness, insight meditation, we're coming to a direct experience, direct seeing something about our life experience, what's going on here, that helps to release the places we're closed, holding on, clinging to something, stuck, contracted, closed down. All that gets blown open, all that gets liberated and freed. And to have that insight, liberating insight doesn't mean we're fully liberated, but that now we know how to keep opening, Once we've let go and experienced some liberation, we know, we have a taste for it, we have a feel for it. And then to keep practicing and keep opening to that and realizing it more and more, not because we have to or should, because when there's a genuine feeling of freedom, of letting go, of contraction, clinging, there is in that letting go an invitation, a call, a request to do it completely, to follow through on it. Don't let it be partial, because the partial means we're still closed in some way. And the kind of the call or the request or the welcome that is possible to feel from liberation itself. That liberation welcomes us, beckons us, when the first kind of seed of liberation is strong enough. And to follow that beckoning, to follow that yearning or that kind of call is one of the great kind of tasks of life. And here what we're seeing is that some people feel that liberation, this personal goal of Buddhism, that for each individual, for themselves, they become liberated and free. That's selfish. Why would you do that? It's kind of like you're abandoning people to do that. And really what we have to do is be supportive of other people and help the world and things like that. But here, the Buddha offers it as one of the principles of cordiality that leads to the benefit for the world, that leads to love and respect, that leads to cohesion, to non-dispute, to concord, and to unity. There's an intimate connection to liberation and love and respect and care and to not wanting to be in dispute, to wanting to move towards unity and support for others. That, and in fact, for the Buddha, he goes on here in this text to say that of the 6 principles of cordiality, the last one is the highest. And then he uses the idea of, just like the pinnacle of a roof, of a house, is the highest point in the house. So this last one is the highest point. That's maybe supported by all the others. That's why the metaphor of the house is so useful. All these other principles of cordiality, loving kindness and generosity and virtue are the support for the final one, the greatest one, which is liberation itself. And to live in liberation and to share that liberation with a community of other people, this leads to lots of love, lots of respect, lots of movement towards unity, to connecting, to breaking down the artificial and painful separations we have between people, to not be in dispute, but be in conversation and creative tension and finding a way together with all the different ways that people, have different points of view. We still have different points of view, but we don't have to be in dispute. So love, respect, cohesion, non-dispute, unity, concord. These are the principles or the goal or the guiding lights of the teachings of the Buddha. And they're attained, they're realized by practicing goodwill and loving kindness, by practicing and living with generosity, by being virtuous, the kind of virtue that really feels liberating and helps us to get concentrated, and to develop liberating insight, to have the mindfulness of sitting really help us to see right down into the depths of our hearts, to that place where freedom is possible. And with that freedom, I'm confident that you will benefit the world. I don't think it's possible for someone who has attained some degree of letting go of their clinging to not benefit others, whether they want to or not. So may you reflect on these 6 principles of cordiality and maybe practice them both publicly and privately. Especially privately, you might see what it's like to do these things, practice goodwill and generosity, without necessarily getting credit for it, but just doing it anyway, and see if there's some way that can nourish you and support you and inspire you to greater and greater possibilities of love and respect and unity and concord for this world of ours. May we put aside our verbal daggers now and look for unity and non-dispute and friendship with all beings. Thank you.